and welcome. This is What the Story Said with Dr. Pauline Baird. As you know, I tell our cultural stories, our family histories, our whispered stories, our, our long lost and traditional stories. What is Story Say? Today we are going to be talking about how you grow so big. And we have Lynette Johnson with us today to tell us her story. She was tagged by Beatrice. So, Lynette, how are you? What does story say?
I'm good. Hi, Dr. Pauline. Thank you so much for having me.
So, um, as you know, I invite you to tell stories because I'm curious about how people's journeys have impacted their present. I tell traditional stories of what happened in the past, but I feel like the past stories inform the present. So, um, you got a story for us. First of all, tell
Yes.
us a little bit more about yourself. Who are you? And what are your passions?
Well, my name is Lynette Johnson. I'm the founder and director of House of Basadi. House of Basadi is a small medium enterprise based in South Africa. We make African print inspired accessories ranging from earrings, like the earrings that I'm wearing, clutch bags, clothing items, corporate gifts. And my business is not just for profit, but at the same time, it's tied in with a social purpose whereby I actually train women in disadvantaged community, of which they eventually become part of my labor force. So besides also what I do, I think I'm more than that because we tend to typically decipher who we are in terms of what we do. So I also think that I'm a giver, I'm here, I've been placed on earth to serve, to contribute towards bettering society and bettering human beings. I'm also a mom, I'm a wife, and I'm a mentee to a mentor, sorry, to young girls, where I just share, my life experiences with them and help them and direct them in ways that I'm able to.
Wow. I am very interested in learning how you've come to this calling as I see it. Oh, by the way, people, this is House of Basadi. Lynette made this for me, all of this that's going on here. Yes, and sent it all the way to Japan for, yeah. So how did you get into this? You're giving, you're mentoring. Were you always like that?
First and foremost, I think, the way God designed everything in my life into where I am today, I think it was chosen. He chose me specifically for where I am at. So I'm from Kimberley, a small diamond town where diamonds were discovered. So my first job was actually me being a yard official. And after having been in a mainly men-dominated field, I realized that, after a few years of doing that, I wanted more. So as a result of that, I actually relocated to Johannesburg. And with that, later on, I met my husband, of which he then got an opportunity to work in Nigeria. And I think that's actually where my journey started. So I had to resign from my job as a media planner and move to this country without having any expectations. So having been placed in a new environment, I think that is where a lot of the change came about for me personally. So I got involved. I assessed and saw what most of the community members were into. And in Nigeria, a lot of people are very industrious. So they make use of, learning how to make things, they have a high quality of craftsmanship. And I sort of got involved in that, where I embarked on learning how to sew. And through that, I actually got offered an opportunity to head up a skills acquisition center that was an initiative by the South African High Commission. And having worked with women in terms of trying to teach them, how to make like the beautiful earrings and necklaces that you're wearing, at the same time, I took on that skill for myself. So being able to teach others, and being taught by them themselves, it's such an empowering experience. And most of these women actually, created home run businesses whereby 75% of them who were part of the program actually started making and selling, the handcraft work that they made. And after 5 years there, I then came back to South Africa, and that changed the whole trajectory of my life. I had no longer a passion for advertising, for branding. I felt like my purpose in Nigeria was solidified, having seen the difference that, I made in those women's life and the effect it had on my life. I then went about, going into the community where I grew up in and teaching some of these girls these skills that I had obtained, and just mentor them and coach them and just share the valuable lessons with them. And some of them, got to take it off and, started home run businesses. But I mean, as we know it, we can't really impact everybody. If you get 1 out of 5, I mean, at least change has been created. Yeah. So out of that, I think my purpose of being a server, going into these communities, because I think those are the people that are mostly overlooked. The poor, the most vulnerable, the uneducated. And I think those are the people that we can actually offer so much of ourselves, because we each and every one of us, have a role to play in terms of just making society better. And regardless of where you come from, I think, if we just all embarked on that by going back to where we come from and just sharing that our skills, our resources, and, for a better community.
Yeah, that's admirable. You talk about sharing skills and resources. To do what you do, how do you get resources? What are some of the challenges that you've encountered, and how did you overcome them? Because I'm curious, small community, poor people, you're going to make things, you have to get materials and stuff. How does all of that come together?
I think with resources, I mean, the most valuable resource for me is people. And I love to meet new people. And I mean, that's how I met you once. Yes. Over 2 or 3 years ago, and here we are. So I love to connect with people, on a deeper level, and especially like-minded people who's got a very soft spot for giving back to society with a philanthropic aspect of it. So I think where we can come together and utilize, all our resource set within our individual backgrounds, that's how we can collectively then plow it back into these communities. So for example, in Nigeria, I met a lot of people. Like 5 years in Nigeria, it's been such a blessing. I met people from all over the world. I met people from various backgrounds. But what's so amazing for me is that those relationships still to date, they are still continuing. And with some of those people I've embarked on partnerships with, which is so amazing, because again, like I said, we all have something to contribute and have sort of like a network chain effect. If you bring something and a little goes a long way, right? So through having partnered and having worked together with people within various fields, I've been able to, give back, because I'm at the forefront of working with these communities. And I think that even though it might not be a passion of yours, because I know a lot of energy goes into dealing with these specific type of people, and it's not for everybody. So for someone that's at the forefront and who actually loves it, to see that change take effect, other people have then contributed in a way where they felt they could, and then I would go into these communities and serve them better. So that's how I've gone about, just collectively gaining these resources to sort of put it into effect in these communities that I work with.
Thank you. When you talk about partnerships, what does partnership look like? What do you mean when you say you have partnerships?
I think for me, partnerships, first and foremost, there has to be an alignment of values, because if that is somehow off key, then it will never work. Right. So for me, and with the work that I do, I love to engage in people that have a like-minded mindset in terms of, number one, their focus should be the most vulnerable, the most disadvantaged communities, and with a genuine concern to give back and not to take from them, but literally to add to them. Because we also know that a lot of people like to expose doing work that's for the benefit of the poor, but where they enrich themselves. So that is something that I look at. I look at, organizations or corporate that have a genuine interest in wanting to uplift people within these communities, and then see together how we can actually, come together and bring forth our resources to design maybe a program for these communities. Like one partner to one of my partner programs is Kliptown Youth Program. I was actually a volunteer there over 10 years ago, just before we went to Nigeria. So I volunteered. The founder is Tulani Madondo. He was actually the first CNN nominee for South Africa. So I volunteered in that capacity, I think for about 6 months, just before we relocated to Nigeria. And I applied myself, coming from a marketing environment and joining at the time when they had his campaign going. I was able to then use my marketing experience and media owners that I knew within that set space to sort of contribute towards maybe flying marketing material, T-shirts, so I think that for me is key. And having returned back to South Africa, I revisited because we've also continued that relationship over the years. And having come back with so much knowledge and skills that I went back into that same environment and said, listen, this is me. This is where I volunteered a few years ago and I see how far you've come. And I believe that I've gained so much over the years that I would like to contribute and add to what you're doing. So Kliptown Youth Program is after school tutoring program where they actually assist kids within the Kliptown community with their academic support. So they provide academic support. So some of the mothers whose kids are part of the program, I then approach Kliptown and say, most of these women, basically all of them, they never completed high school. Some of them have no work experience whatsoever, but they are capable. Yeah. And I think that's an area where we can take on such people, because it's not to say that they don't have a vision for their life. It's there's a lack of mentorship, there's a lack of coaching. So that's where I then stepped in and we had discussions with these women and say, listen, you're just sitting at home. How would you feel about being part of a program where we're actually going to teach you, how to creatively produce and manufacture things with your bare hands? And we had about 40 women that actually showed up. But because it was only, a starting point for us, we only started initially with about 10 women. Yeah. So over the course of the last year, obviously 4 of them, fell away, they lost interest, but 7 of the women graduated from that program. And throughout the entire 2021, we then managed to teach them how to make accessories, how to make corporate gifts. And as a result of that, we then actually got to present some of their works to 3 international tour groups that came from the US, of which they were just so amazed with what the women got to produce during that period of time.
So hold on. These women learned the skills and then they were able to make gifts for corporate people. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. So we were teaching them how to make various things. And at the same time, we were bidding for business from some of the donors of Kliptown Youth Program. And one corporate company actually, they bought about 200 items. And that was big for us. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a formula that worked. So you learn, but at the same time, you become economically active and you're able to provide for your family. Right. When you compare that to just having sat at home, you've acquired no skills. You don't know where you're going. So within that short space of time, that is something that we saw. It actually really worked well. So we're continuing with the program this year, where we're actually going to embark on teaching them how to sew. Because last year, we only basically just focused on handicrafts, something practical, something quick. But this year, we're just going to take it up a notch and actually teach them how to sew, because as the world is opening up, there has been a lot of demands that have come through from people inquiring about, outfits, clothing pieces. Conferencing is opening up. So that in itself lies a lot of opportunities then for these women to get upskilled, further, and then go back into that space of becoming economically active by actually selling some of the products that they've produced.
Right. I have a question. So when the women come to you, they bring their own skills in that area, or they have to learn everything from scratch? How does that work?
Basically, everything from scratch, because when we did the interview process, some of these women, like I said, none of them have ever been part of a creative process like this. Some of them have no work experience whatsoever. So we practically teach them from the onset. We teach them the basic skills, and at the same time it's incorporated with business, you know, how to price your items, and also how to professionally, you know, address yourself in terms of when we're having markets, you know, how do you approach a potential customer? So all of that is incorporated beyond just learning the skill, but also how to utilize key business tools in terms of it being more effective for you. So the women come with no skill. So we provide basically all the resources, all the materials, and what we just require for them is their commitment in terms of time. In terms of time, yes.
Yeah. So if a woman sees Lynette Johnson coming, what is she thinking? She sees you coming up the street.
That's a very interesting question. People tend to judge before knowing a person, and I've actually had very bold people come back to me and say, you know, before they got to know me, that I come across as very intimidating, you know, I come across as obnoxious. And this is before me even having opened my mouth. I just step into a room, and especially coming from women, which is interestingly enough, you know, they already have created a sense of who I am, what I present, without really knowing me. But then as time goes on, they're like, wow, you're beautiful, but you're also nice. So I think that's the conception about beautiful women, that we're not nice, you know. And I don't blame people, because I've come across beautiful women that don't even engage. I mean, when they look at the work that I do, like, what is a beautiful woman like yourself doing in Soweto, in a poor community? I mean, what on earth? Yes, you know, so I think we should move away from judging people without, you know, getting to know themselves. But at the same time, I come across as very gutsy, as very bold. A lot of people say that I make a presence when I enter the room without even having announced who I am. But at the same time, I'm very humble, you know. I'm a people's person, and I think that shows in terms of also the people that I managed to attract in my life, because my heart is pure. Whatever I do, whatever I set my eye on, it comes from, you know, who I am. It comes from a true source of me being genuine. You know, I don't like superficiality. So basically, you know, what you see with me is what you get. Like the girl next door, even though I don't look like one to some people. And I don't like to be put in a box, you know. So I think people need to get to know me first and foremost before making that judgment based on appearance.
So I gather so far, you like to serve. You look for the underserved communities to give your gifts to. As you learn, you taught, you engage, and you bring all your skills and resources to your projects. So where do you go from here?
Where do I go from here? I mean, that's a tricky question. It's nice to know the future, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of what I've managed to accomplish so far with these women, we're hoping to get, you know, some of the products into big retailers. We actually concluded one with a big retailer. Unfortunately, I can't give too much detail on that. So based on my work, I would love to create jobs, like sustainable jobs, to some of the women that I serve. I would love to see my items, House of Basadi, being placed in big international retailers as well, across borders, not just in Africa. And I would love to see the women come out being better than what they've gone into. So far, I've seen that, but I would love to be able to contribute to that in a bigger scale. And in terms of, you know, just empowering them more, and also encouraging them, you know, to go back to school. Because the 7 women that we worked with last year, I mean, I got to have a chat with them and find out, you know, why they didn't finish their high school. And I mean, they had various reasons, and I feel like it's something that I would love to see come to fruition. So I've gathered all the necessary information, and we're actually meeting on Monday, you know, and just outlining our goals and where we all want to go collectively, but also individually. So I would love to see them complete their high school education and take it beyond that, but basically get out of that poverty mindset. And I think a lot of poor people tend to think that where they come from, that's it. They don't see bigger than that. They don't see beyond that. And I think that's where awakened people like ourselves should take it upon ourselves to have a chat with these folks and share our stories, because I mean, as a Black person, we don't come from being born with a silver spoon in our mouth. We had to work hard, but at the same time, we also had to tell ourselves that this is where I am at, but this is where I see myself. And at the same time, act upon that. I mean, you can't just go about it with wishful thinking. Oh, I wish this, I wish that. But you actually have to take the necessary steps to move yourself one step ahead. Yeah. So that's where I collectively, and I don't know if you know that Basadi actually means women.
I meant to ask you that. I meant to ask you what
Basadi means. Basadi is the plural term in my native language, Setswana, which means women. So, and that is the essence of the business in itself, working with women like yourself, where you provide a platform. Yes, we get to share our stories. We might not come from the same backgrounds, but we have a lot. I mean, what you're doing for me, just having me on your show, I mean, that is what it's about. How can you help another sister? Exactly,
That's a lot, Lynette. Oh my gosh, there's so many things I want to say here. When you talk about how do people get to know and dream beyond the village and beyond their circumstances, people like us have to go back and tell our stories. We have to tell the stories. So I have this platform where I'm telling stories. And you can't see, but I have a vision board up there. And on that vision board, it says, Mission for Women on a Mission. That has been on my heart. And I have it there, and the women come. It's surprising. What I want to tell the audience, I met Lynette at the New Year's Eve party some years ago, 3 years ago, or thereabouts.
Just before COVID.
Just before
2020.
COVID. Yes, this
yes.
Yes.
2020.
2019 turning 2020, and we share the same birth month. This is our birthday month, and that was like, oh my gosh, we have almost the same time for our birthdays, and we connected. And she started telling me about her story of how she serves, and I thought this is pretty great, but I didn't even think she'd be on the show. But when I asked Beatrice to come on, I said, Beatrice, would you tag another woman? Just the couples coming together. Tag another woman. She said, I tag Lynette. Now, Beatrice has not met Lynette yet in person because of the COVID in South Africa situation, but she tagged her. So here Lynette is, are we talking about women connecting? In our small communities, when we can't meet physically, we can meet with our stories. We can tell our stories, and our stories can have impact because it shows what's possible for our listeners. And I love that, because you said, you just can't wish it. You got to just do it. And someone can show how it happened. I come from a poor village. You come from Kimberley. And Kimberley is where? Is in Township? I don't know. Is it in Township?
Kimberley is the capital city for one of the biggest provinces in South Africa. Okay. But it's so underdeveloped. I mean, it has a huge potential. But at the same time, I mean, the poverty levels are so high. The education levels are so high. Unemployment, everything is high. Yeah. So in my own personal but at the same time, Kimberley has produced a lot of diamonds, in terms of people, but not a lot of them I see that's even in the public space have gone back and used that platform that they have. And I think when God has blessed you and given you so much, I think the onus lies on you to at least go back, and give it forth. But again, I mean, that is something that stems from your heart. It stems from who you are, because not a lot of people would do that, which is unfortunate, really.
And maybe they're not always able to. So my challenge to viewers is do what you can. Maybe your story of giving or service is not now, or it may never be your story, but whatever is your story, you just do it to serve or impact or recognize it as part of your journey. Because my thing is about how you grow so big is honoring those moments when you recognize how you've developed on this path or this journey called life. So for the people out there, I want you to listen, tune in again. You will learn more from other women about their journeys. As Lynette says, as Black people, we have to tell our stories. We didn't get it on a platter, and we still made it, or we're making it. So let's make a difference. So thank you, Lynette, for being here tonight. It's morning in South Africa, it's nighttime here. And to our listeners, please tune in next time, and y'all walk good.
Thank you so much.
Any last words? I didn't give you a chance to say anything you might want to say to anyone, if you want to.
Well, just to add to what you say, I think we really need to also take time and just sit still with ourselves and see how we can make a difference
Right.
and do away with our actions not aligning with what we say. Because at the end of the day, you're only fooling yourself that you appear to be about this, but then what you do is complete contrast. And I mean, that's my dream and hope for Africa, that we just come together as a collective and work together, but be genuine about it and sincere, about it. And I think, growth will come in leaps and bounds, and we'll have a better nation, a better society.
Yeah, and all across the pond, all the way over here too, wherever the diasporic peoples are. Yes, let's do the thing, one story at a time. So we'll call it a wrap. Thank you very much.
Thank you.